By the next morning, the unease I felt had spread through the entire team. We couldn't ignore it any longer. Something was wrong. The lab had become a place of tension. Every corner felt like it was watching us, every silence loaded with dread. We all moved a little faster, a little quieter, as if afraid to make a sound. I couldn't get the image of the shadow outside out of my mind. Even though it had disappeared so quickly, it left behind a gnawing feeling that something was there. Something we weren't meant to see. Rachel, of course, was the first to say what we were all thinking. I think there's something in the lab with us, she whispered one morning as we sat in the break room, sipping our cold coffee. Her voice was barely audible, but the fear in her eyes was unmistakable. "You're not the only one who thinks that," I replied, lowering my voice. "I saw something last night. A shadow. It wasn't normal." "Same here," Eric added, his voice low. "I've been hearing whispers in the walls. It's like it's trying to communicate, but it's too faint to understand." "We're all hearing things," Dr. Maxwell interrupted, appearing at the doorway. He didn't seem fazed by any of it, but there was something in his eyes, a guarded look, a shadow behind his calm demeanor. "Isolation does strange things to the mind. It's just stress, that's all." But even as he spoke, I could tell that he wasn't convinced. Something had shifted in him, too. The air was thick with suspicion. Every time the door creaked or a light flickered, we all jumped. The shadows didn't seem like shadows anymore. They felt like something more. That night, the hum returned. It started low, just a vibration in the air that I could barely hear, but it grew louder as the night wore on. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but as the hours passed, the hum became impossible to ignore. It rattled the windows and vibrated through the walls like something was pressing against the building, something heavy and alive. I tried to sleep, but the hum kept me awake. It wasn't just noise, it was something else. Something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up, made my skin crawl. It felt like a presence. I could feel it watching me, even though the lab was empty. Suddenly, I heard it. A whisper. It came from somewhere behind me, just outside my room. It was too faint at first, but then it grew louder, sharper. It sounded like a voice, but not human. A low, guttural whisper that seemed to scrape the inside of my skull. I froze. I wanted to scream, to call out for help, but I couldn't move. The whisper continued, growing more insistent, more urgent. It sounded like it was right behind me now, breathing down my neck, but when I turned to look, there was nothing. Just empty walls, just an eerie hum vibrating through the building. I shot out of bed, my heart pounding in my chest. I ran down the hallway to the common room where the others were gathered. They looked at me with wide, tired eyes, all of them on edge. "Did you hear that?" I asked, my voice shaking. Rachel nodded, her face pale. "I heard it too. The whispering." "We all heard it," Eric added, his jaw tight. "It's not just the isolation. There's something here, something we can't see." We all stared at each other for a long moment. We were trapped here, isolated in a lab, surrounded by endless snow and ice. There was no escape, and yet it felt like something was closing in on us, something that knew we couldn't leave. "I've been doing some research," Eric said, breaking the silence. "I found some old logs from when the lab was first built. The first few years are missing. Completely wiped out. No data, no logs, nothing. It's like they erased it all." "What do you mean erased?" I asked. "I don't know," Eric said, shaking his head. "But the more I look into it, the more it feels like something's been hidden. Something they don't want us to know." I couldn't deny the truth in his words. The lab's history was shrouded in mystery, and the more I thought about it, the more I began to suspect that whatever had been erased, whatever had been hidden, was tied to the presence that was growing stronger in the lab. That night, we all sat together in the common room, the hum continuing to vibrate through the walls. It was as though the lab itself was alive, breathing, watching us. And the longer we sat there, the more I felt it, the presence. It was real. It wasn't just in our heads. "I'm telling you," Rachel said, her voice trembling, "it's not just a force, it's something sentient, something that can control the lab, the equipment, maybe even our minds." Her words sent a chill down my spine. It made sense. The way the lights flickered, the way the temperature would drop suddenly, the strange noises in the walls, it wasn't random. It wasn't just equipment malfunctioning. There was something here. And it was using the lab, the isolation, to manipulate us. It was feeding off our fear, our uncertainty. "I've been feeling it too," I confessed, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's like we're being pulled into it, piece by piece." "That's exactly it," Eric said, nodding. "The more we stay, the more we're tied to this place. And the longer we stay, the more we become part of it." I could feel it too. Every second in this lab was making it harder to tell what was real and what wasn't. Every hour felt like it stretched into eternity, and the presence was always there, watching us, whispering to us. I glanced at the clock. The sun had set hours ago, but I knew the rules. I knew that stepping outside after dark was forbidden, but the question lingered in my mind. What would happen if we left? What would happen if we broke the final rule? Would it be worse than staying?
The lab, once just a place of cold science, had turned into a prison. We had all felt it by now. The suffocating atmosphere, the constant weight of something unseen pressing in on us. The rules, the strange behavior of the building, the whispers, the cold spots. It was as if the place itself had become alive, and not in any way that was comforting. Whatever was happening, it wasn't random. We weren't just being affected by isolation. There was something else here, something older, darker, and far more dangerous. The isolation was starting to take its toll. The cold was unbearable, and the mental strain was even worse. It had been weeks since we'd arrived, and the days seemed to blend together in a haze of monotonous research and strained attempts at sleep. But sleep wasn't the escape it should have been. Every time I closed my eyes, the presence returned, lurking in the darkness of my dreams. It would creep up on me, its whispers louder now, its grip tighter. Rachel started to show the first real signs of cracking. She wasn't sleeping. She couldn't. She'd wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, screaming about shadows in the corners of her room, voices calling her name. She was no longer the bright-eyed researcher who had come here with hope and excitement. She had become a hollow version of herself, too afraid to move, too terrified to speak. I tried to talk to her one evening, but her eyes were wild with fear. "You don't understand," she whispered. "It's coming for us. It's already here. We can't get away. No matter what we do, it's always watching." Her words sent a shiver through me. I had seen the same thing, heard the same whispers, but hearing it from her, seeing the terror in her eyes, made it all too real. Something was hunting us, and it wasn't just the presence. It was something far worse, something that was using the lab as its trap. Eric had become increasingly irritable, his patience wearing thin as the days dragged on. He'd snap at anyone who tried to talk to him, his mind consumed with the mounting pressure of the lab's strange phenomena. The equipment malfunctioned constantly. The temperature in the lab fluctuated without warning. Sometimes it would feel like we were suffocating in the heat. Other times it felt like we were trapped in a freezer. No one could explain it, and no one was trying to. I think we were all too scared to ask the questions that needed asking, too afraid to admit that this place, this research station, wasn't what it seemed. Maybe it never had been. The worst part, though, was the way the presence started to affect us physically. I noticed it in myself first. I'd wake up with strange aches, my muscles sore, my joints stiff. It wasn't like I'd been working hard. I'd barely done anything outside the lab. But every day it felt like my body was shutting down, as if I were aging faster than normal. But it wasn't just me. Rachel's skin had started to pale, her eyes sunken. Eric's hands trembled uncontrollably when he tried to work with the equipment. We were all slowly breaking down. And then came the first real sign that we weren't just being mentally broken. We were physically being drained by whatever was here. I was working alone in the control room one night when I noticed a shadow in the corner of my eye. At first, I thought it was just the flickering lights, the usual malfunctioning equipment. But then, it moved. It wasn't just a shadow. It was a figure, tall, dark, its edges blurred, like smoke. I froze, staring at it as it hovered just outside the window of the control room. It was watching me. I could feel its gaze, cold and intense, seeping through the glass. I didn't want to move, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. The shadow lingered, then faded into the night, vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. When I rushed to the door, I found it locked. It shouldn't have been locked. The doors to the control room were never locked. I fumbled with the handle, my heart pounding. I tried to push the door open, but it wouldn't budge. Something was keeping us in. I ran to the common room where the others were, my mind racing. The presence was getting stronger, and it was beginning to trap us. First the whispers, then the shadows, and now the door. It wasn't just haunting us anymore. It was controlling the lab, the walls, the doors, everything. When I burst into the room, I could see the fear on their faces. They knew something was wrong too, but they didn't have any answers. None of us did. "We need to get out," Rachel said, her voice shaky. She was standing by the window, staring out at the snow-covered landscape. "We can't stay here. We won't survive." But Eric shook his head. "We can't leave. The storm is getting worse. The winds are too strong. It'll be impossible to make it back to the nearest station." "We can't stay here either," I said, my voice tight with fear. "We're being hunted. Whatever's out there, it's not letting us go." It was true. We were trapped. The presence had us in its grip, and we couldn't get out. I don't know if it was the fear that was draining us or if it was something more sinister, but it was starting to feel like the lab itself was alive, like the walls were closing in, suffocating us. I couldn't think clearly. My thoughts were scattered, my body exhausted. Every inch of me screamed to run, to escape, but I knew that wasn't an option. The storm outside, the shadows that followed me, it was all part of the same nightmare. We couldn't escape. Not like this. But we had to try. We had to fight back. I looked at the others, my breath coming in short gasps. "We need to stick together, no matter what. If we're going to survive this, we can't be alone." Rachel nodded, her eyes wide with fear, but also with a strange resolve. "We're not going to let it win." It wasn't much. It wasn't enough, but it was all we had. And the worst part? The worst part was that I still didn't understand what it was or why it was doing this. But I was starting to realize that we weren't just here for research anymore. We were part of the experiment, and it was only just beginning.